Good afternoon and welcome to Ask the Experts. I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor-at-large of CBSMoneyWatch.com, and I'm joined by
Jack Otter, executive editor of CBSMoneyWatch.com.
And special guest star in the house. Don't say your name. That I'm the hostess. I get to do this. Ready?
Right.
I got to build it up. You know, it's dramatic. Ready? All right. Put the camera in. Roland, there is it. Let that beautiful shot look straight into this camera over here, okay? This is Dan Kadlec, Bank of Dad, author, blogger, just all-around good guy. Can I say that?
You
That's
can
not
say
a bad
it.
thing.
I try to live up to it.
All right. His work regularly appears all over the place. Time, Money Magazine, former editor of Generation section. Anyway, you write about such great stuff. It's like that intergenerational family stuff that really just is so thorny for people.
Well, and it's a huge area for people my age, you know, which is many of us, the baby boomers, that we're a little. I think people are a little tired of our issues, but we.
You know what? I know I am. First of all, I'm really upset because I don't think we are part of the baby boom generation officially, are we, Jack?
I just missed it. And you,
Yeah,
we're
right.
we just missed it.
We
yeah.
just so
We're Gen
we
X.
don't really have a generation. So there's sort of generation name envy. There's something I don't know. We have some name, but it's ridiculous.
X.
No, not even. We're like this
No?
weird thing in between. Anyway. We're sick and tired of your crap from the baby boomer
I
generation,
don't
but
blame you.
it is good because you consume a lot of financial information and products and topics. So therefore, we speak to you with great respect.
Yes, and we're always worried about our pocketbook and our kids and our parents, and we do have many, many issues.
Yeah. Well, wait a second. You won a New York Press Club award?
For my coverage of economics. Yes.
What do you get for that? Like, you get money for that?
You get
Or a
you
plaque.
get a little plaque, and you get to hang it on your wall. And
Did you have to go to a dinner with
you have to go to a dinner? And
was it in a good place?
I don't remember.
Oh, for God's sakes. All right,
They serve
fine.
chicken, though.
Yeah, exactly. At least maybe salmon also is a second choice.
I think there might have been some steak on the
A
plate.
filet mignon
I think
as
there
well?
might have been some steak
Awesome.
on the plate. And a really good Cabernet.
Oh, very nice. So, Dan, we're going to talk about the sandwich generation. That is, you say 20 million folks who are caring for both their parents and their kids at the same time? That's huge.
Yeah, you know, and this is kind of an old issue, especially, you know, we've been talking about it for years and years, but the recession has kind of put a new spin on it. A lot of boomers thought they had this figured out, and then boom, we got boomed.
Boom.
Yeah.
You know, one of the issues is that our parents, some of our parents who we thought were pretty well set, all of a sudden they're not. You know, the 80-somethings, a lot of them had retired with dividend income, and you know, if you owned BP or any of the banks, you know, that's gone. And so all of a sudden, even if you thought your parents were set, maybe they're not anymore. And certainly, even if they are still okay, a lot of your inheritance is gone, and you can't even count on that. So it's changed the equation. It really has. And just to continue on the other side, on the flip side with kids, you know, college educations, I mean, these universities, they're trying to hold the line, but for the most part, you know, it's still expensive to send a kid to college.
I just saw the College Board came out and prices up again. And in fact, public university rising at a faster pace than private university right
and
now.
you can't get away with that anywhere except at the university level, you know, in the education system. And so it's whatever problems were there before, they're there in spades right now.
We have a story up right now that says more than 100 colleges are charging over $50,000 a year tuition.
Do I have that? Hold on a second. Oh, look. And here's all that. By the way, Dan says you actually shouldn't get a degree because here, wait a second. College, the flawed case against getting a degree.
The flawed case. You know, there's a big debate now about whether you should go to college or not, whether it is worth the expense. And where, you know, that blog where I really came out on it's still worth it, but you need to pay attention to what kind of degree you're getting. And if you're going to come out and be a teacher or a cop or something along those lines, you don't need to go to Harvard. You know, there's really good educations available for, you know, a fraction of those schools.
Plus, if you saw The Social Network, you really wouldn't want to go to Harvard because it seems like a very strange place to me. I mean, I don't know.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Then you say, if you're a sandwich generation person, you just pray that your kid is going to invent something. That's what you got going for you right now.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Is Mark taking care of mom and dad?
I don't know. I think his parents are okay, but I think his father was like a dentist or something. I don't know. I might be making that up, but anyway. So let me ask you a question, or let me just pose this: if you've got a question for Dan, or you are in the sandwich generation, shoot us an email. Ask the experts at moneywatch.com, or go to moneywatch.com and pop into the chat room, and we'll get your question. When I think about the sandwich generation, it's all about priorities. And the problem with most people is that you want to kind of put yourself first. But if you have aging parents or a kid who's in need, it's sort of hard to put yourself first, right?
It's hard, but you should find a way to do it. Seriously, you can't take care. It's like on the airplane where they tell you to put that mask on first before you take care of your kids. You're not good to anybody if you can't take care of yourself first. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. Obviously, sacrifices can be made, and you really want to help both sides. But when resources are stretched, I mean, I wouldn't be borrowing from my 401k to put my children through an expensive college. I mean, I wouldn't do that.
Right. But would you borrow against your 401k if your parents needed help in the home and you weren't there? I mean, if Jack's parents live far away,
which they do.
Right, and you said if your parents needed an extra set of hands in the house, might you do that, Jack? Would you have? I mean, it's sort of hard to be a kid and not
I
do
think
that.
the problem with this whole issue is that it's so hard to quantify. So. I can only answer that question if I was in the specific situation, and it might not be the financially smartest move, but it might be a case where you just can't fight the emotions or the feeling of responsibility.
I mean, and I think that for some reason, I think it's harder for, in the experience that I had when I used to advise people, is that it's harder when you have the parents than the kids. Somehow or other, I think parents are okay with saying no to their kids a little bit more easily than saying no to their parents. And I think that that's really, really hard. I mean, it's not a good thing when your father says to you, I used to be able to get $20,000 a year from dividends or interest. Now the stock market went down. Interest rates are so low. I get no money in my savings account. I get no interest, and I need help.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You going to tell your dad no?
That's what I'm talking about. It's very, very hard.
You're going to say, Dad, you know what? You can't join the club anymore. You're out. No more golf for you.
Maybe you look for ways to help that don't come out of your pocketbook. May move in with you. That doesn't cost.
Hold on a second. That doesn't cost. What were you about to say? That doesn't cost anything?
You'll have to clear that with your spouse.
You better have one understanding.
Take my 401k, please.
Exactly. Wait a minute. Okay, I got my answer now. All right. So let me get some questions going here because we have some good ones. Henry from Oklahoma writes, I live in Oklahoma. My parents live in Arkansas. They're 85 and 86. They still live alone. I'm worried about what happens when one of them gets sick. I have no idea if they have a plan in place to pay for a health aid or a nursing home. Dan, how does he talk to them? How does he bring it up?
Well, you have to talk to them. You have to bring it up. And the wrong time to talk about something like that is after the fire is already set. You want to bring things up, sensitive subjects you want to bring up in a timely way. When there's some reason, something in the news, maybe a friend who's going through a problem, and you say, look, Mom, Dad, I've got a friend who's going through this issue with his parents, and, just maybe start thinking about what your setup is. And I don't mean to pry, and I'm not asking you how much I'm going to inherit one day. I care, and I just they're going through this. I just wonder where you are, and that's how you kind of do an icebreaker and get the conversation going. And
Jack, you notice that our Dan has 12 tough questions to ask your parents. He blogged this, so maybe we should start memorizing these.
Yeah, that's a good story. I had a hand in that story, and it's very good. It has a couple of suggestions for icebreakers. It has a website called 4070.com or 4070.org.
4070talk.com.
And the point there is when you are 40 and your parents are 70, that's about the right time to start this conversation. So I do find that a very useful one. I had a writer in a former job whose father was actually a stockbroker and managed his own money. And then he had a bad health situation, was in the hospital for a while. And so with his mother and his siblings, they decided, you know what, we got to talk to Dad. So my friend David got the nod. And his approach was to say, Dad, I've got an older friend. He and his wife, they need to live off their savings for the rest of their life. And he needs some financial advice. Could you take over his portfolio for him? And his father looked at him and said, are you crazy, me? And he started laughing and he said, Dad, I'm talking about you.
Oh, that's good.
And his father took it very well, and that was it, and that was the end of the conversation, and so they handled it. And then that's how they chose to handle it.
And
But-
Dan, you say it's important for the kids to really know who's on the team and where the documents are, where the bodies are buried. You know, like what's going on here, right?
Well, right. I mean, you don't want to end up not having information when you can't get it. So who's on the team? You know, give me the phone numbers, give me the account numbers. This is something, by the way, that all of us should do. We should all have a good record of our assets and put it someplace where, you know, myself, where my kids can find it. And you certainly want to ask your parents to put that together.
And the one thing I did with my dad was, you know, he's got like accounts all over the place. So I said, I know you do all this online trading. Give me the passwords. Like, you know, and because it really, if something were to happen, we want to be able to know where things are. So it's not just like the formal, the will and the trust, but it's a list of where things are held. If there's a safe deposit box, you should know about it. Although if you don't know about it and then you find out about it after, it's kind of like a nice little present. It's just hard to open that darn thing.
Believe it, it's really hard to open it.
Exactly.
It really is, and you have to. You might litigate that or at least go in circles with the bank for months before you can get in there.
Yeah.
And you want to get a sibling, an attorney appointed executor.
That's right. That's right. And you know, by the way, if you have all these documents, the people who are your executors or your trustees and even sometimes your beneficiaries, if they're old enough, should have a copy of all of your documents anyway. You don't want to like make them dig around. Okay, Jay Larson wants to know, although we do not have children, it's likely we will have to at least help with caring for our one remaining parent. So that's not really a sandwich. That's a half sandwich, I guess. And a half sandwich and an open-faced sandwich with a bowl of soup. We're currently unemployed. It will take a while before the economy recovers. It's a major problem. What advice do we have for Mr. J and Ms. J Larson?
Wow. With no income, I'm not sure how you. Ask them to move in. You know, if you have no income, I'm not sure what you can do.
There are services, elder care services for people like this, and it sounds like he should absolutely get in touch with them because it's also so complicated.
Of course,
Even if you have the resources, or you know, finding out exactly how to do it, where aid is possible. Rules vary immensely from state to state. So they should look up Google elder care in your state and get some nonprofit assistance.
Right. And if your parents are I don't know how old they are, but if they are of a certain age, that there should be some sort of game plan around, you know, like what's going to happen. Because if they're in their 60s and you're in your 30s or late, you know, early 40s, there is a chance for maybe a long-term care possibility or doing something with their money that makes sense ahead of time. But if they're in their late 80s, it's obviously a little bit more difficult, right?
Hopefully you've thought about this, you know, again before it happens. But that's a good point, Jack, about checking with the state agencies and the nonprofits.
All right. Okay. Here we go. More. This is a good question. In general, when you have limited resources and you feel like you're being pulled in several directions, your parents, your kids, are there any rules on your priorities where they should be? Are there any rules of thumb? Like there's a certain percentage of your income or net worth that you should be willing to do, or is it just case by case?
I think it's case by case. But I would, with your kids, first of all, I think you owe your kids more than you owe your parents. But again, depending on how dire things are. The other thing, you know, arguing against that, you could say, well, my kids are fairly young and they've got a lot of time to recover. So maybe my emphasis should be on taking care of mom and dad. And I think I would fall on that side of the fence if things are bad enough. Certainly your kids have options. You know, if it's college, they can get loans. They've got a long time to pay that money back. So you got to sort of look for the real priority, which, again, depending on the situation, it might be your parents if they're in a bad way.
All right. Here's a good question. Megan says it's a great question, so I'm going to read it. Mom's 91. She has lost what ability she had to resist the hordes of political, charity, nutritional supplement, commercial money grabbers like Publishers Clearinghouse, on which she spent $5,000 when she still had her checkbook. Keeping the promise we made before Dad died to take care of her needs, we now have her on a cash budget for personal expenses, which works fairly well. except that now she takes cash budgeted for toiletries and groceries and buys money orders to send away for things. Pardon me. My sister has her power of attorney. We hesitate to invoke it because we really want her to have as much control and dignity as possible. She lives in a retirement community. She's financially secure. But how do we value dignity and control versus protecting her savings in case of an emergency?
Well, the first thing I would do is get a full accounting of these kind of money mistakes. Look at the past 6 months or year or 2 years, whatever works. Put it all in one place and say, look, Mom, this is what has happened to your money over the last 12 months. How do you feel? How do you feel about this amount of money going towards these expenses? And sometimes when you see it all in one place, it has a much bigger impact, and you might be able to reach her that way. There's also an interesting story recently, I mean, it was in Time Magazine, about how the first signs of Alzheimer's are money mismanagement.
I noticed that, although, a lot of people probably thought they erroneously have Alzheimer's after watching their finances over the last few years, so I got nervous about that.
But I found that really fascinating. I mean, it's common sense, and we sort of knew about it, but to actually see it put in words like that, that's really a good signal. I mean, if you're having trouble, you can't remember your bank, how much money you have, or where your accounts are, or what you bought recently, there might be bigger issues that you need to be worried about.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think in this particular case that they're going to have to value protecting the savings over dignity. And the reason is because if the pattern continues, you're still in the same situation but with no money. So really, I think if you look at it as my only two options are take control now and preserve some savings, or take control later when there's nothing left, it becomes an easy choice.
Yeah.
As painful and difficult as it is to implement, making the decision should be fairly easy.
Yeah.
And this problem is huge. I mean, we have an iron in our house right now because my mother-in-law's sister had this problem. She blew all her savings on the Home Shopping Network, and she had 18 irons.
18?
And maybe it was 15. It was a lot of irons.
Oh, my God.
So get all
That
the
woman
irons.
loves to iron.
Get all the irons and put them in her bed,
Right.
and say, look what you got here.
But it's really is kind of a strange thing because it's that weird role reversal, right? And it's so uncomfortable, right? And then you're sort of in this place where it's very uncomfortable, I think. But I agree, Jack. I think that these are not good choices. But at the end of the day, you really want to protect the corpus of this estate and make sure that there is something left over if she were to need care. And it doesn't. I'm not even so sure you have to have her declared incompetent. My father held the power of attorney for his parents, and there was no incompetency. He just managed all their money, and it was just he paid the bills directly. It was a much easier system, and it was a way to I think at first my grandmother was not happy. You're not going to tell me what to do, Albert. And then he said, okay. And he just kept saying yes and did it. And it was okay.
And I think at the core, most people of a certain age, they understand that they need some help. And they might actually welcome your approaching them on the subject. The dignity question is a good one. And so you want to be careful. But there's also, you're doing them a favor, and they may actually, they don't know how to reach out to you, so you reach out to them, and you find, I think, a lot of times that they appreciate it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that there's a relief in it.
And, one option might be, this is an odd analogy perhaps, but how we sometimes talk about investing and say that we all have this temptation to beat the market and everything, and the way to sort of exercise that is to put the vast amount of your money in passive index accounts, and then keep a little bit, and that's your gambling money. Is there an analogy maybe to how you help your parents, and you figure out a structure that pays the bills and does everything else, and then there's a little bit of money, and if that goes to Publishers Clearinghouse, well, maybe that's the price of freedom.
Right. But you limit what that fund money is. But now let's turn that to your adult kids, right? Because there's a certain, I think that there's a certain feeling that parents want to help their adult kids out and get them on their way, but if they're struggling or something's going on, but then you find out wow, I just gave my kid what I thought was rent money and he's going out for dinner all the time. What do you do?
Well, I mean, that's a problem. We all want to help our kids, but if you're lending seed money to start a business, you need to make sure that's where it's going. I mean, you should write that check directly to a supplier or a vendor, or if you have any issues about trust there. I would give my children a very short leash if they were blowing money that I thought was for some gainful enterprise.
You also have a pretty good system in terms of how you helped your daughter, right? I mean, you gave her the choice and said, and by the way, if you blow this, don't come to me until next
that's
quarter.
right. With all of my kids, one of the first things I did was put them on allowance, and that continues really now with two of them in college. They're no longer on allowance, but they know what their resources are, and they can't come back to me. If they come back to me, I'm gonna show them 3 or 4 different ways they can get a job and make the money. They're not going to get a handout from me. I just think that's the best thing you can do for your kids, and no matter what age, is to get them off of that I'm going out, I need $20 kind of thing. So teaching your kids is, I'm glad we've sort of come back to that side of it, because the parents are the parents, but the kids are young enough, and you can really shape them and get them to sort of think about this in a different way.
All right. Well, we've got a couple more questions. Here's Lucinda, who says, our 23-year-old son has been living at home for over a year since graduating from college. He doesn't have a job, doesn't have money. By the way, that would not go well with me. I don't have children, so I can speak freely, right? I'm so hard-ass, right? But, I mean, go work at Starbucks. What's the deal? No job.
Right. Get a job.
Get something. Go be a bartender.
Sitting on the couch watching TV is not an option. It just isn't. If you're 23, you're out of college. I realize jobs are tight. Go volunteer.
Go do something.
Go
right?
volunteer and meet some connections that way, and just get busy. I mean, the saying, the more you do, the more you do. Sitting around is not going to be the answer, and you may be overqualified for the job at Starbucks, but at least you're doing something. And
come on.
And when you go to that job interview for whatever he wants to be, a banker, or a lawyer, or a doctor, I think you're a lot better off saying, look, times were tough. I had to go to Starbucks.
Right, and I did.
And here's how I created a new system for getting coffee faster in the morning, or whatever. That beats I watched reruns of Gilligan's Island.
Right.
Yes.
Right, and I said the volunteer option is open to anyone.
That's right. By the way, so Lucinda's actual question was, she says his job prospects don't look so great. I don't want to turn him out, yet money that should be going into my 401k is helping him out. What can I do? Lucinda, honey, let me tell you what to do. You're going to tell your son that you can live there, but he cannot live there as long as he doesn't have a job. And he's got to do something, whether it's volunteering. He can go read at the local school. We don't really care, but he's got to do something. And I don't want you to stop. I don't want her to stop putting money into her 401k. I don't know how old she is, but I mean, that's just ridiculous, right?
Yeah, no, you got to. The 401k is really sacred, and it needs to be a real emergency before you stop that.
Megan, by the way.
And to put it in stark terms, at 80, you're not going to be able to get that job at Starbucks.
Right.
Your 23-year-old son can.
Just do something.
Yeah.
I have this friend, oh my God, she's holding out for her dream job. She's going to be a 99er, one of those people who exhausts 99 weeks of unemployment because she can't find her dream job. And I completely freak out on her about this. I can't talk to her anymore about it because it's hard to be a friend. You're sort of like, come on. You're not the parent, but it's so annoying to me. I would do anything. Or not anything, but pretty much. I am old now, so I can't do anything. All right.
Okay, next question, I think, Jill. Yeah.
Right on. Oh, boy. Okay, so here's the question. I have young 71-year-old parents. My father is in a nursing home due to complex health problems, and mom, who lives at home, is responsible for all financial decisions and transactions. They have an irrevocable trust established. Irrevocable trust means a trust that you can't change. It's not changeable. This person is one of 3 trustees should the trust need to be enacted upon my parents' death. It's not exactly how it works, but I'll get to that. Right now, having conversations with my mother on organizing her financial documents. Through this process, I'm observing behaviors of absent-mindedness, forgetting keys, losing bills inside her home, hoarding. So when do you pursue incompetence? Ladies and gentlemen, isn't that a fun? Woo! This is an uplifting Ask the Experts. Dan, how about you come back next time? We'll talk about your favorite scotch. This is great.
Good smoky one.
Yeah.
Wow, I think that's case by case, but certainly you want to you want to do it before it's too late, before the assets are gone, before things are being whittled away, before it's gone to the point where you can't find what you need. That's a really tough decision, but it's one you have to make. It's one you have to make before everything disappears.
What do you think, Jack? In terms of pursuing that, do you feel like there's a tipping point?
I don't think you can say that. I think the tipping point is when you determine that the person is dangerous to his or her savings.
That's right.
They could lose it.
And I think you sort of think of it this way. Would I really want my mother or my father making this decision on behalf of my own kid? Do I trust that? It's like the one time I knew that my grandfather had to stop driving was when I was getting in the car with my grandfather, and my father said, "I'll drive you." And he kind of popped in. And I realized, oh my God, he's scared to have me in the car with my grandfather. It's sort of the same thing. If you don't trust, if you wouldn't put your own kid in that position, or your best friend, or yourself, then you say, you know what, this isn't right. And it's okay. You don't have to make it declaring incompetency. You can kind of edge your way towards it. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of thing. So I think it's so fraught, right?
Right. And again, I think they would appreciate it if it's done in the right way.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a legal document.
And if possible, again, this is, on the one hand, it's harder, but on the other hand, I think it has a higher success rate, is you kind of take that intervention approach. And I think she said she had 2 or 3 siblings. So you try to get a consensus and then get everyone together to present it. So there's no, I don't like what you just said to me, so I'm going to go to your brother and see what he has to say. You're all there in the same room together, and you come to this difficult but necessary decision as a whole.
Can I have something uplifting before we go?
Please.
I mean, really. So let's say your kid is lucky enough to get a job. Whoa. Melody wants to know, my daughter has landed her first real job. I want to encourage her to save some money in her company's 401k. How can I get her to do this? Melody, haven't you learned yet you can't make a 23-year-old girl do anything? But what can she do?
Well, go ahead.
I mean, the statistics are out there about saving early and often. I think last time I was here, we talked about one, and the money that you save between 20 and 30 is worth 15 times the money you save between 50 and 60. You can save early and then stop and be better off than starting late and never stopping. And there's lots of statistics out there that will show you that. So maybe you start there.
I think what you do is you show them Dan's blog post that's called "Kids and Money: Stats that will get their attention." And there are some great stats in here, and it's great to quantify it, right, Jack?
And what you want to do is look at a chart, a fever chart that shows exactly that phenomenon of what happens if you put $200 a month away from 20 to 30, where that is when you're 70. It's incredible, and it's not too late. But if you wait until you're 30, 35, you're just not going to have that power of compounding. You're going to have to save a lot more.
And one of the things I'm doing right now, as I point out in this post, is before my kids actually have a job, I'm trying to train them to love the 401k. So for this summer, my 2 oldest had summer jobs, and I agreed that I would match every penny they made if they would agree to put it in a Roth IRA.
Wait, will you do that with us too? And that's true for all of you Ask the Experts watchers, listeners, viewers, users, right?
A summer job I can afford.
All right.
So we are about to open that first IRA for them, and I think they're going to be kind of amazed to watch that, whatever it is, $1,500 grow year after year. And the match is it's a generous match, but that's how a 401k works, and you might as well sort of get to know it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if you have the resources, if your 15-year-old has a summer job, you can help them put together a Roth IRA. And the growth they're going to see over 60 years, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, everything's predicated on 30 or 40 years, but if you're doing it for 50 or 60, I mean, they could be millionaires off of a lemonade stand.
Let me ask you the last question here, which is, if your kids just, they're not your children, right? Because, Dan, you're a professional, you write about this, you're into it, you make it fun. What are a couple of tips that parents can use just to kind of get their kids at least somewhat sensitized to this, and to, they don't feel comfortable enough with their own finances, but what can they do to help their kids out?
Well, it keeps bringing me back to paying an allowance and having a budget and rewarding good financial behavior with a bonus of some sort. I think kids need a sense of accomplishment. So if they do a summer job and you can give them a little something extra for that, it's really about forming good habits early. And allowance and budgeting is really top of the list.
And I think you've written about the importance of even letting them make mistakes. So that's part of the reason you give them the allowance, because then they blow it on something dumb, and that feeling of regret can be really powerful later on.
Yeah, it's the no bailout rule. You spend all of your money this month. Well, you know what? You're not going to the movies Saturday night because you don't have any. Until next month when you get a little more money, and then maybe you'll make it stretch next time.
And just a reminder, when do you suggest people start paying allowances to their kids?
As early as 6. I would stop when they go to college. That's me. I mean, you might want to pay. Some parents I know do pay while their kids are in college. I think that they should live off what they make over the summer, but as early as 6, yeah.
Jack, you like 6?
Well, I have to say my daughter is
Sheepish
7, and we started, and it's been stop-start. We haven't been consistent about it, and I kick myself, and we need to be. Yeah.
The guilt.
Yeah,
The
true.
man is racked with guilt.
Well, even if it's just here's X amount of money for one thing that you want to do over and over again in your 7-year-old life, make it last, and then when it doesn't, you can't do it. I mean, if it's candy, if it's movie, whatever it is. Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap it up now. So, Dan, what's the newest best book that you've written? You've only written like 25,000 of them. So what's the one we should be plugging right now?
It's more about baby boomers, but a new purpose is out in paperback now for a few months, and it's really all about finding meaning and giving back and doing great things with your life that aren't necessarily about money.
Now, that's kind of a tough sell in an environment where people have just been crushed by a recession.
It is, which is why I play up the volunteer angle, because people don't have the resources they once had, but everyone has got time. Not everyone. Presumably, you can find
people.
Presumably, you can find some time, and there's some neat statistics about what your time is actually worth. And if you're the kind of person that says, I want to give X amount of money every year, you can give it in hours. They figure about $21 an hour is what a volunteer is worth. And if you're in some sort of professional capacity, you can figure it's worth about $100 an hour.
Oh, that's cool. So, Jack, you ready to do a little volunteering?
As soon as that girl and that boy go to college.
There you go. That's right. He'll be finding purpose.
Yep.
So, Dan Kadlec, the blogger, the Bank of Dad, the author, the winner of the New York Press Club Award. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you.
It's very fun.
Jack Otter.
The benefactee of Dan's generous matching offer.
Exactly. I am too. I'm really psyched because it's like CBS will match up to 6%, and then Dan might come and do another 9%. So that brings us to a nice percentage of 401k money. So we really do appreciate that.
We're going to have to get related someday. If we're not related, maybe.
We'll figure it out. So tune in next week for Ask the Experts, and you can always shoot us a question between now and then. Ask the Experts at MoneyWatch.com, and we can always use great ideas for a show topic or theme. So send that to us, and thank you so much for watching. I'm Jill Schlesinger.
I'm Jack Otter.
Say it.
Dan Kadlec.
Damn, he's good. Thanks for watching.